Hi, yeah. Everyone who spoke so far, I've literally been in awe of everything you've been saying. It's so inspiring and like it's nice to cross paths with new creatives and like-minded people. So thank you. Yeah, I'm Jaya Gordon Moore, also known as Jaya Had a Dream. Yeah, I rap, sing, and produce. That's my main musical pathway. I'm 21. I'm Jamaican Irish. I grew up in Cambridge, which I know that everyone's gonna think, oh, Cambridge, like, oh, that's a prestigious city. But it's really like everybody knows that every city has ends or a ghetto or kind of like rough area. And I didn't grow up in central Cambridge around the Cambridge University. Like, it's really not like that. So one thing I try and do in my craft is just like show not everything's what it seems kind of thing. Yeah, I'd studied a sociology degree at University of Nottingham, which is what got me into Nottingham. Um, and yeah, my main arts hustle is music. As I said, I rap, sing, and produce. I do a bit of radio as well, and journalism, and video editing and graphic design. Um, yeah, and I'm also I'd count myself as an arts activist, like everybody pretty much in this group. Like I use my creativity to speak out about social issues or how I feel about different things. And I've recently started combining styles more, doing a bit of acting and spoken word and rap and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I work full time at Fearless Youth Association, which is a small non-profit organization which aims to empower BME communities through different. I mostly do the art stuff, but there's also training programs and stuff like that. And I started that straight out of my degree, luckily, because it was literally in the pandemic. So as much I will go into this, but as much as the pandemic affected me badly, I also think it gave me. I actually was one of the really lucky ones, and I got a lot of opportunities during the pandemic. Yeah, right now I'm really proud of the community arts world. No, I'm really proud of two projects I've done in the community arts world. One of them is the anti-racism project I'm doing with New Art Exchange. And it's just about like we're doing this film which started through focus groups in the community about how to be actively anti-racist because we felt like after March 2020, no, actually summer of 2020, everything's just it's clear it was just a trend to a lot of people, and so we're trying to like reinstill in a lot of people's minds who maybe don't have to think about racism every day that there's still issues and we still need to continue being actively anti-racist. um yeah, and then another project that I'm really proud of right now is the Young Women in Music project. I'm doing a project for young women in music because Castle Cavendish, this funding organization, just came into a meeting that I was in and were like, oh, if you could do a project for women, what would you do? And I was like, I think there needs to be more spaces for women in music, and especially non-white women and non-middle class women. So I set up this, it was like a year in the making, and it started like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it's doing quite well. We're having a lot of like quite reputable female musicians or local musicians, but also just worldwide musicians contributing to this project. And yeah, I'd love to connect with some of you and see if ways that you could join this project or like contribute because yeah, it's really inspiring. Um, yeah, I feel like my arts craft started, and this sounds kind of depressing, but from rock bottom, like I had to be at quite a low point to realize that, oh, I really want to make my life better. Because as I said, although I grew up in Cambridge, which sounds like a prestigious city, I grew up in quite a poor socioeconomic background, and my mum suffers with quite a serious mental health disorder, which I didn't even realize that was a thing because mental health wasn't really spoke about. So when things were happening at home, I didn't really understand it or like define it, and it was quite defeating. And I was really, really in a bad place when I was like 16. And I was always really into hip hop because it a lot of people around me were into it and showed me a range of music. But yeah, when I got to 16 and lots of things happened quite badly with my mum and other people in my life, and I just thought I cannot do this anymore. Like I'm literally going to like I'm really getting suicidal at this point. So I was like, I need to start writing music and doing stuff. And luckily, I had people around me. Like I had mentors at school, which basically were my parents for 2 years, and like they got me to university. They got me into sociology. Um, And yeah, I use sociology in my music to just express myself, and it's really therapeutic. But then when I got to uni, I started to like Nottingham, I started to really be public with it and more overt with it, because I felt like Cambridge, everybody knew each other and they wouldn't let me break out of the mold that they'd set for me. Like, because you know, in your hometown, like everybody knows you and they've seen all your up and downs, and they try to really like box you. So moving to Nottingham was one of the best things I ever did, and I'd recommend going to uni, even if because I didn't go to uni for my sociology degree. I really enjoyed sociology and I did really well, but like that actually wasn't the reason I went to uni. And I'd say like there's lots of reasons to go to uni other than the course. It's just kind of getting out of a situation is quite good. Yeah, so I started putting myself out on social media and releasing music just off my own back, and that's another thing I'll go into later, which I really think starting being a self-sufficient artist, like a lot of people here have said, like learning to produce a bit and learning how to and buying software and saving up for software is like one of the best things you can do, because there's a lot of gatekeepers who are white or male, and it's quite difficult to like actually be yourself through those gates, like if they even let you in. So I think really the biggest advice I could give is be as independent as you can. That doesn't mean don't rely on some people, but just having a home studio and things like that, and having a laptop, just those type of things is like the biggest thing. um what motivates me is hope. I know it sounds stupid, but I think one thing that keeps me through, and sometimes I don't have it, but just to have hope that things will get better and that what you're doing is contributing to a wider picture, is a big thing. Change as well, like yeah, I guess that's the same thing, hope and change, that the hope that things can change, I guess. And one thing I want to touch on is that I feel like sociology inspired me so much with my creativity, because a big thing in sociology is called the sociological imagination, which is about seeing how your private issues feed into a bigger public issue and how you can resonate and connect with people. And I use that throughout my music and community work. And also another thing that motivates me is passing on culture, heritage, and stories, because I feel like when I in the 90s in hip hop, you would have a lot of a wide range of rappers, but they were all still pushed with the same energy. So you'd have like Nas, who's more of a storyteller, but he was at the forefront almost as much as Biggie, as in like now we look back and we see Nas and Biggie and they're like, but nowadays I don't feel like it's the same. I feel like only certain people are pushed. So we don't have the storytellers as well as the flex, like the people who flex. We don't have both, and we need a bit more of a yin yang in hip hop. So that's something I'm trying to do, balance it out, because I feel like I want to look back and see, I want people to grow up listening to hip hop and see the diverse range, and that they can get different things from different people. Because I feel right now, I'm not anything against like City Girls and stuff, but right now City Girls is the only aesthetic for a female rapper that really like you can push, and I really don't fit that aesthetic. And uh I feel like I want to make more opportunities for people to just maybe do different rap, because not all of us want to speak like that, and I think some of us have boxed ourselves into that even unconsciously. Yeah, I wouldn't say the pandemic affected me that much. I feel like I was really lucky. I was able to concentrate on finishing my degree and do more music and get back into this new job that I started. And I was actually really booked and busy during the pandemic. But I'll go into this later. In retrospect, I feel like I was booked and busy symbolically, because people saw, oh, look, this is a female rapper sociologist who works in anti-racism. Oh, we're trying to do loads of anti-racism work right now. Let me chuck some money at her to do some Zoom calls and speak about things. It's almost like making me do the work for them. And I'll go into that a bit later. It was really good though. Some opportunities were great, but others I feel like is definitely tokenistic. And yeah, yeah, I'd also say one thing I didn't realize that affected me in the pandemic was not being able to do shows, because not being able to do shows, like shows are actually a focus group, a networking opportunity, and also it re-energizes you as an artist. And I missed that so much, and I didn't realize until after. With my art in the next 5 years, I really just want to be a rapper, because I feel like if you're a rapper, and obviously this is very ambitious, but if you're a rapper on the level of Jay-Z and Nas, or even Dave, like Dave has been brought up, in Stormzy, you can do so much off of that. Like being a rapper is like kind of like being a superhero in a way, because you can like think all these rappers, they're able to be going into acting, then they do like they start doing stuff in universities. And yeah, I feel like the power of being a rapper is real powerful, and if I could do that, that'd be great. I also want to do more projects for women in music, and I want to potentially set up a community organization of my own in Cambridge from what I've learned, because as much as I love feeding into the city of Nottingham, my people are still struggling in Cambridge, and I need to give back to the community that brought me up. So that's one thing I really want to do. Advice I'd give to other creatives is integrity. This has been brought up already, but like, you have to be yourself, because as it's been said, you won't be a timeless, or like, you won't be able to really leave a legacy of your own if you're just copying someone else's, and you'll stand out. It might be a longer process, but it'd be more worthwhile. Yeah, I'd say boundaries as well is a really difficult one. And I really do want to do a business course after what Honey said, because boundaries is a huge one. I've had the life sucked out of me. Like, I actually almost had a mental breakdown this week because I realized I was taking on way too much, and like, I was almost getting guilt tripped and emotionally manipulated into things because of my passion. If you're passionate, sometimes people will really like violate, and you have to set boundaries though, because it's your job to set boundaries. So that's one thing. And one thing about setting boundaries is that you'll always be you always look kind of like a bad person if you're willing to do that, but just remember that other people in the room, they actually probably thanking you for doing that because they couldn't do it themselves. Like, you could be voicing up and it could help other people, but also just don't feel too outspoken by setting your boundaries, because it's really hard not to feel like you're being rude or harsh, but you have to set them boundaries. Study your craft, like study other people, and study a range of styles. If you're a rapper, make sure you listen to other genres, because like, I listen to a range of genres. Like, I really like Bowie. I even like My Chemical Romance. I think My Chemical Romance are sick. I love Tame Impala. Like, I love like music you would never think I love, probably. I really love. So, oh, like Kate Bush and things like that, Lana Del Rey. Like, you got to listen to different people. You don't have to listen to who everyone else is listening to, but just explore. Don't put yourself into one box. Your story matters, remember that, and your art matters, because I feel like if you grow up in a working class background and you go into the arts world, which I didn't even realize I was part of till this year, there's a lot of shame which comes from being working class, mixed race or black and a female, because people really instill this shame on you as if you're like trash. So then when you go into the arts world, you feel a bit like you're not part of it, and a bit of imposter syndrome. But yeah, just remember your art does matter, and yeah, just have that passion and let that passion drive you. And yeah, another thing I want to say is, yeah, the point of your art matters. I know it's not an art piece, but I did my dissertation on drill music, and everyone looked at me as if I was crazy, kind of. They thought it was cool, but they're like, oh yeah, of course she's doing that. And I ended up getting a first and the best presentation at University of Nottingham that year for my dissertation. So like, just make sure that you do what you want, because everyone else was writing about quite like wordy, like abstract topics, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to analyze drill lyrics, and like, yeah, so it's quite jokes. So I think just stick to your gut. And what needs to change? More working class roles, for more working class people in roles, more black people in roles, more women in roles, and not in tokenistic roles, not to tick off a list, and more like permanent roles, because a lot of time they're getting like hired for little things, but then they're not seen as like stakeholders. Even they should be seen as really like proper contributors. Another thing I've realized, and I really like the artists who are involved, but I've realized that a lot of organizations, they hire the same black people across the different organizations, and it's actually embarrassing and offensive. Like, I'm laughing, but it's just because it's ridiculous. Like, there are so many creatives. There's even an event going on tomorrow, which I won't dwell on too much, but it's very symbolic. I need people to stop doing events to fill in reports, stop doing black excellence and black greatness and showcasing blackness to tick off a box for your report that you're helping the black, Asian, minority, ethnic community. It's such a slap in the face, and like, I feel like so many organizations do that. And you have to be culturally competent, but to be culturally competent, you have to have actual people from that culture contributing, and that's one thing I see a lot. Yeah, it always seems to be the same, like even quite middle class or privileged like people doing these events. Yeah, and I've learned so much about how community organizations run and arts organizations run, and it's quite depressing. I hate the whole thing of filling in reports. I'd love it if like some arts projects were a bit more timeless and they didn't have a deadline. So many arts projects have deadlines, and it doesn't allow people to expand, because you do an arts project, you get commissioned for it, and then you don't even have time to promote it properly because they're not paying you to promote it properly. And it sucks because it's like you put in all this work and then suddenly they want it done by October, and it's like the work's not getting recognized. It's all to tick off boxes. So what's the point? So I think a lot of things need to change with that. Yeah. That's it really. I think, yeah. Everything everyone said was pretty much the same as me. Just keep your integrity, unapologeticness, and be self-sufficient, and fight for change and voice out stuff, because you can actually make a real difference.
Does anyone have any questions for Jaya they'd like to go ahead with? I've got one with me. When you go to these events, and this is more not just on the social level, but just a personal level. How do you feel when you're doing these things and you feel like you're ticking a box? Does it take away that importance just for you personally? How does that make you feel?
I don't know, because the thing is, you have to find the balance between taking opportunities and getting your bag, but also respecting yourself. And sometimes a lot of the events, you don't know whether they're tokenistic until you're actually there. And then it's that feeling where you're sitting in the Zoom and you're like, oh, okay, it's really awkward. Like I had one that really annoyed me. It was with the council, and they paid me quite a lot. And I feel like I didn't even need that money. It was almost like they were trying to get rid of the money quickly. So that was a bit weird. And then I felt under pressure. I was like, am I even delivering that amount of work for that amount of money? And then like, it was with the PCC, and he's going on about how stop and search has got better and how they've increased the police on the street and like all this stuff. And then I had to do a spoken word piece afterwards. And then the counsellor was all like, oh yeah, I'll check you out. Oh, you're amazing. And of course she didn't. And I wasn't expecting her to, but it was such a slap in the face, like pretending as if you're going to go check out my music, pretending as if you care. And then like, I think that's a slap. I'm quite a young person in the community, and you're like, it's quite disrespectful. Like I'm quite strong-minded, so I won't take it that seriously, but that could have defeated other people. Like they could have expected these counsellors to check them out and they didn't. Yeah, it's quite frustrating, but I do still take it on, because I'm getting more recognized in the community, and then I'll have more power to like make a change.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so you said you mentioned Nas, Jay-Z, some of my favorite rappers, and I just wanted to ask, who's the most inspirational out of those hip hop artists, or who do you draw the most inspiration from?
I think Nas, but not in regards to his personal life. It's really difficult. This is what I was going to say before as well. It's very difficult as a female rapper to look up to rappers, because they think you're trash. Like rappers speak trash about women, and then I have to look up to them. It's really difficult. I would say Nas, but I think Nas for his artistry and the way he raps, and yeah, I like the way how he's able to not be in the limelight too much as well. But Jay-Z as well. But even then, like, just it's really difficult for me to have role models, because I've realized you can't idolize anyone. And yeah, as a woman in hip hop, it's so difficult. But I would say Nas. Yeah, I would say Nas.
You should check out Rhapsody. She's a female.
Oh yeah, I like Rhapsody. Yeah, it's just I feel like with female rappers, yeah, it's good, but it's like there's loads of really, I feel like I'm in between. I'm quite conscious, but I'm also quite literal and just what's happening, and it's quite hard to find someone who's like that. But I do like Rhapsody, and I like Mariba. She's quite cool because she produces, sings, raps, and like she's cool. I like her.